One of the biggest improvements in Forza Horizon 6 over its predecessors is undoubtedly the world itself. The map feels dense, the roads are varied, and the towns are more believable than anything we've ever seen in a Horizon game before. The Japanese setting gives Playground Games an opportunity to create an environment that genuinely feels different from previous games. But after spending enough time driving around, I started noticing something that I couldn't quite ignore. It isn't the road layout, the graphics, or even the weather. It's the traffic. Not because there isn't enough of it. In fact, Horizon 6 often does a surprisingly good job of making the roads feel populated. The problem is, quite quickly, you begin seeing the same vehicles over and over again. Once you notice it, it's difficult to unsee. At the time of writing, the AI traffic appears to consist of a relatively small group of vehicles. You've got the Honda Acti and Honda E, the Jeep Wrangler, the Mazda Speed 3, Mercedes-Benz G-Class, Mitsubishi Pajero and Galant, Nissan Stagea, Subaru Legacy and WRX, Toyota Crown, and the Toyota Japan Taxi. The community wiki also lists a box truck, a bus, and a flatbed truck as traffic vehicles. The traffic pool feels much smaller than it first appears on paper. It isn't necessarily a huge problem in itself, as plenty of open world games reuse traffic vehicles. The issue is that Horizon 6 takes place in Japan, and Japan arguably has one of the most visually diverse everyday vehicle fleets anywhere in the world. The more I look at the traffic roster, the less random it started to feel. Almost every vehicle has a relatively large visual footprint. They're tall, wide, long enough to occupy a lot of space on the road. That got me wondering whether Playground Games deliberately selected these vehicles because they make the roads appear busier than they actually are. One of the things that makes driving around Japan so distinctive is that ordinary traffic is anything but ordinary. You'll see luxury sedans sharing the road with tiny K cars, compact hatchbacks, delivery vans, little SUVs, quirky microvans, hybrid taxis, and all sorts of practical commuter vehicles. If you set a game in Los Angeles, you'd expect to see pickups, Teslas, American SUVs. If you set a game in Italy, you'd expect to see Fiats weaving through narrow streets. Japan has its own visual identity, and everyday traffic is a huge part of that identity. Japan is different. K-cars alone account for a significant proportion of vehicles on Japanese roads, particularly outside of major city centers. They're small, economical, incredibly practical, and often have designs that are charmingly unique. That's why I find it disappointing that Horizon 6 only includes one K vehicle in normal traffic, the Honda Acti. The Acti makes perfect sense as a commercial K vehicle example, but where are the modern commuter K cars? Imagine seeing Suzuki Altos pulling out of side streets, Daihatsu Tafts parked outside convenience stores, Suzuki Jimnys climbing mountain roads, or Nissan Sakuras quietly moving through residential areas. Those are exactly the kinds of vehicles that would make the world feel immediately more authentic. The more I thought about it though, the more I wondered whether this wasn't simply an oversight. What if the traffic selection was actually driven by environmental design? Looking at the current traffic roster, a pattern starts to emerge. G-Wagon is a tall and boxy SUV. The Wrangler, also tall and boxy. Pajero, another large SUV. The Nissan Stagea, large wagon. Even cars like the Mazda 3 and the Subaru Legacy have fairly substantial proportions compared with the average Japanese K car. There are very few vehicles that have genuinely tiny visual footprints. Once you notice that trend, it starts to feel less like coincidence. If half of the traffic consisted of K cars, each vehicle would take up far less visual space. To create the same impression of a populated world, the game would probably need to spawn significantly more traffic, which means more AI, more collision calculations, more streaming, and more CPU overhead. From a technical perspective, I can understand why Playground Games may have avoided that. The problem is, this optimization comes at a cost. It makes Japan feel less like Japan. One of the new car types introduced in Horizon 6 is eclectic domestics. At the moment, it feels surprisingly underutilized, but it could become the perfect home for exactly the kinds of everyday Japanese vehicles that are currently missing from traffic. Here is an idea for a possible festival playlist focused on K cars. Rather than another month dedicated to exotic performance cars, this festival playlist celebrates the vehicles that define modern Japanese roads. The reward cars are among Japan's best-selling commuter vehicles and would naturally expand the eclectic domestics offerings while also providing ideal additions to the open-world traffic pool. By introducing one or two of these cars each week, playground games could steadily diversify free-roam traffic over time. After completing the playlist, players wouldn't just have 6 new cars in their garage, they'd begin encountering them through the world, making the roads of Forza Horizon 6 feel more alive with one update. These aren't supercars nor hypercars, and they're certainly not setting Nürburgring lap records, but the series has always been at its best when it celebrates car culture as a whole rather than focusing exclusively on outright performance. Some of the most beloved additions to this series have been humble everyday cars that turned out to be far more fun than anyone expected. Adding additional vehicles to the traffic first, and then gradually making them playable, would achieve several things at once. Players will begin noticing these unfamiliar cars out on the road, naturally creating excitement and speculation about which ones might become drivable in the future. The eclectic domestics category would finally receive the meaningful additions it currently lacks, and finally, playground games would get far more value from every vehicle they produce, with each model serving a dual purpose as both a player car and a traffic vehicle. Forza Horizon 6 succeeds in making its roads feel busy. That's never really been the issue. The issue is, these roads don't always feel like Japan. Whether this was a technical compromise or a deliberate design decision, I can't help but feel that playground games sacrificed authenticity in favour of optimization. In a series that's always celebrated car culture, that's a disappointing compromise, because sometimes it's the ordinary cars, not the extraordinary ones, that make a place feel real. But those are just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. Do you think the traffic variety in Forza Horizon 6 is good enough? Or do you think playground games missed an opportunity to make the roads feel more authentically Japanese? If you could just add one K car to the game, what would it be? Let me know down in the comments section. As always, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.